UIC.
Freedom the people of
Hell yeah.
Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah,
Yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Ready for broke every chain. That when you free up the people, levitate. Jamaica member, you ever great. I feel burn up the fire upon every snake. Me give thanks in every way. God still a look down once see we safe. UIC run the road long time. GLP and PMP I sell we out. Still I do the test even though we know the end result. If them coulda kill with them catch we and hang we know. No force, no coercion, me freedom in a step. No one fi rob we and kill we and feel them I go make it out. You know see the leeches, you know see the hands of the devil when him sleep with.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining me today. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. If you can, just indicate. Indicate if you can hear me clearly, please. I see Bruce Davis is on. Let me just fix this here. Yeah, I'm not seeing any comments in the chat box. Okay, now we're seeing. Good evening, Tracy, Blake. Good evening, Lion Rule, loud and clear. Thank you so much. Good night, Misha Earl over there in, what's that now? Close to South St. Elizabeth. Wonderful, glad you can hear me. Tonight is a very important topic. Let me see here. You have heard a lot of discussion going on social media about the one second. I got a fly in the ointment here, if you will. I need to address. Yeah, you heard the issue of the World Health Organization at their 75th assembly, talking about the amendments recommended by the United States of America under the Biden administration, which, as you all know, is very, very committed to the globalist agenda and will spare no bones to give up the sovereignty of the American people, and by extension, the sovereignty of all the peoples around the world. So tonight I want to talk about that. And I'm not going to be, what you call it now, just jumping up and down. I want us to seriously look at what this means and how it's going to affect Jamaica, how it's going to affect your life, my life, our children, our grandchildren, our country. And so tonight I'm going to share with you a news item on the subject, because I think this clip captures fully the issue. But I want you to be aware that because it's a news item from the traditional media, they tell you the truth, and at the same time they try to twist the truth or cast doubt upon the truth. So when you're watching this video I'm going to share with you, I want you to watch carefully for when they share the truth with you and when they try to kind of downplay the truth to pacify you so that you don't realize how serious the matter is. I want you to also realize that it's not new. There's nothing new about what is happening here, except that it's one more step in the process of global governance. And by global governance, what I mean is a one world government. A government where your elected officials are insignificant. Your participation in the so-called democratic process is insignificant. Whatever you vote for doesn't really matter. Now, at the local level here in Jamaica, we're already suffering from that to a great degree. You all know that presently, if you vote for one of the colonial parties or the other, you're still voting for the PSOJ oligarch and the global oligarchs, because at the end of the day, what you have to say doesn't matter. They just give the impression that you have something to say and that you have a voice, but you have no voice. The only way you're going to have a voice is when you become educated and informed and realize that the system of governance we have is a sham, and that you have to now take it upon yourself to own the political process, own the political party, and cause a mass revolution that will transition Jamaica from the colonial system to a truly republic system that the UIC offers. So I'm going to show you this video now, which is talking about what's happening with the World Health Organization. It's going to identify the issues for you, then it's going to try to downplay them, and then I'm going to explain to you what's really happening. And at the end of that, we're going to have a discussion with the chairman of the UIC, Mr. Winston Wright, who is going to join us to have a discussion with me, and we're going to also answer your questions. But before I do that, let me just pause again to say welcome and good night to all of you who are just joining. I see Liddy Williams, I see Sonia Mignat, I see Bobby Baru, I see Sir KB, I see Andy West, I see Doreen Elaine Thorpe, and I see Ming Hutchinson. Good evening, good night, and welcome to all of you. Welcome Paul Clark rather, good to see you on. Ricardo Henry, Don Hallen, good to see you all on. It's really a pleasure. Every night I get a chance to come on. It's a beauty to see you here and to be able to interact with you as we work together to build a new and better Jamaica. So let's begin. We're now going to watch this video, which is going to open our eyes and open our understanding as to clearly what the issues are. And then I'm going to tell you what we can, should, and must do about it if we're going to be a, a free nation, if we're going to continue to have our sovereignty, which is already on the tremendous screen. But if we're going to have our sovereignty, here's what we're going to have to do. But let's first watch this video, understand what it's saying, and then we're going to have a discussion on it. Here goes.
The World Health Organization's World Health Assembly is underway in Geneva, Switzerland, and one of the items on the agenda, amendments to the WHO's international health regulations. There's been widespread concern that amendments offered by the Biden administration would hand over U.S. national sovereignty on matters of health to the WHO. They would allow the WHO to declare a health emergency in the United States, require the U.S. to report to an international compliance committee on whether it was obeying WHO directives, and would create an enforcement mechanism to essentially punish nations that don't follow the WHO's directives.
And that would mean whether it's social distancing, whether businesses are essential or not, whether churches are essential, lockdowns, different kinds of treatment, all of that would be under the jurisdiction and sovereignty of an international body and no longer under the United States of America.
Representative Chris Smith, ranking member of the House Global Health Subcommittee, called it an egregious breach of constitutional principle. Adding to suspicion about the amendments is that they were sent to the WHO in January, apparently without a public announcement, and were only discovered online last month. The wording of the amendments would certainly seem to give the WHO authority over the U.S. government. But how much teeth would the amendments actually have? The WHO Director General has branded claims that the amendments are a power grab, distortions, and disinformation, saying the WHO could not override the sovereignty of member nations.
WHO is an expression of member state-owned sovereignty, and WHO is entirely what the sovereign 194 member states want WHO to be.
and a Georgetown University law professor who helped write the international health regulations that the Bush White House signed on to in 2005, said the WHO only has the power to make recommendations. It could not force a country to allow WHO staff to interfere with its public health decision-making. Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs at the Family Research Council, says while the amendments offered are disturbing, even if the international health regulations had the force of a treaty, which they do not, the U.S. Constitution would have the final say and not the WHO.
It does not trump the Constitution. Even in the case of a treaty, it's similar to a statute passed by Congress in its level of authority. The Constitution still trumps that.
And a new report says the amendments are now not expected to even be decided on this week. There is, however, concern the amendments could be incorporated into a new global pandemic treaty, which the WHO has been calling for. Republican Senators Steve Daines and Tom Cotton sent a letter to the White House Friday calling for the U.S. to leave the WHO as it did under President Trump, saying the World Health Organization absolutely cannot be trusted with more power. It's clear from several of the WHO's own statements that it wants more power to fight future pandemics. What's not clear is if the proposed amendments would grant it the power some say it will. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Okay, there you have it. I'm going to welcome now into the show Winston Wright, the chairman of the UIC, to discuss what we've just heard and how this is going to impact Jamaica and Jamaicans around the world. We have Jamaicans all around the world, in the US, in Canada, the UK, other countries. Mr. Wright, welcome to the show, sir.
Mr. President, thank you for having me on. Good night to all Positive Uniters viewing now and later.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Did you get a chance to watch the clip that I just showed?
I did. Thank you for that very informative piece. The research that I've done so far did not unearth that piece, but I've found similar material.
Right. So basically, what we're seeing here, Mr. Chairman, is the United States of America making recommendations to amend the regulations, the international health regulations that are established under the World Health Organization in order to give those regulations great authority over the 194 countries are signatory to that organization and its regulations. And those amendments that are being proposed by the US, if approved, would give the WHO the authority to override local government and dictate that they should declare a state of emergency and should immediately do whatever the WHO dictates that they should do. And if they fail to do what the WHO dictates, then they will be. This is very similar to the banking system that we have in place, the global monetary banking system, which mandates what countries can do in terms of banking and money transactions. And if they fail to comply, then they're cut off from the banking system and are faced with many sanctions and could cripple and destroy their economy. What the WHO and under the leadership of the Biden administration is now doing is wanting to set up similar health regulations that would give the WHO the power, the authority to dictate the response of government to whatever they declare as a public health emergency or as a pandemic. Is that your understanding, Mr. Wright?
That is very much so my understanding, Mr. President. Now let me start with your very apt example. Right now, Jamaica and several Caribbean countries are on the blacklist of places that are considered haven for money laundering. Right? Now, there isn't much money laundering happening in this region because of those regulations that we were forced to implement to harmonize our banking system with that of the rest of the world in preparation for this kind of move basically makes it next to impossible to move monies without scrutiny. We have the FATCA
Yes.
regulations and so on as well that coincides with that. However, if you look at the TED Talk by a very noted economist out of Trinidad that accused the G7 of bullyism because London, for example, is known haven for money launderers and is a tax shelter. And even the UK authorities admitted that much in recent times. But yet they are at the top tier without any sanctions. But Jamaica has been forced to make several drastic banking changes to be able to participate in the world banking, economics, and finance system. Now,
Yeah.
let's juxtapose that on our health system, where the Director General of the WHO, under this proposed amendment, gets the authority to say to the Jamaican government, because the Jamaican government reports to the WHO on a monthly basis on several key disease indicators. And if you go on the Jamaica Ministry of Health website, you will see those figures. And again, that's where we were able to identify that the Ministry of Health at the start of the pandemic in Jamaica had stopped reporting fever cases such as dengue, etc., and was reporting these cases as COVID cases, and which is still a contention today, which the ministry has not answered the UIC about. But we move on. If they
Yes.
get a disease indicator, they can look at us under this proposed amendment and say, you need to implement pandemic protocols now. And we have to. Here's why we have to. Because if we don't, similarly like how they lock us out of the banking system, they will lock us out of the travel system, they lock us out of the shipping system, they will literally isolate the country under
As a,
this
ma-
regulation.
as a matter of fact, Mr. Wright, what they're doing right now is casting a net. The net includes travel restrictions, the net includes monetary restrictions, the net includes health restrictions. So
Correct.
what they want to do is to create a situation where they can control every single human being on planet Earth and channel them like cattle into one direction. You see how a cattle farmer may have, especially in the industrial cattle, right? These are the mass cattle farms. You know, they get a cow, a baby calf from birth, and it follows a particular trajectory and is managed carefully and tracked carefully, fed a particular diet to achieve a certain genetical outcome, and then they push them out the other end and give you the kind of beef that they want to give. Now, what they're trying to do is to bring the human species down to a programmed and fully controlled um, object or commodity that fits into a program designed by those who think they're smarter than the rest of us. So, for example, a person like Bill Gates, who has billions, or Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk, or the many other few individuals who have billions of dollars, who think that because they have achieved such monumental stratospheric financial positions, they now have an understanding of the world and where the world should go. And I'd like to have a prescription for that. There's also an economical element to this, and the big economic element is, for example, if you now become a major pharmaceutical investor, like say Bill Gates, and you have a vested interest in say developing viruses and antiviruses. You know, you develop the virus and you develop the antivirus, and now you get a controlled audience, a controlled market, where you now have control over worldwide governments to make sure that they buy your product and administer your product to achieve the ends that you have. And your ends can be beyond financial. Financial is one where you get massive financial returns. And there are also non-financial objectives. Maybe you are concerned about population and you want to control population. Maybe you're concerned about the mix of population, racial mix, and maybe you want to bring back in line the racial mix. Let's say you're concerned, you think that maybe the Caucasian race is falling behind and the non-Caucasian race is getting ahead because they're poor and poor people have more children. Then the more industrialized a country become, the more developed a country become, the more independent women become, it's the less babies they tend to have. And so in our industrialized nations or so-called first world nations, you might find that the birth rates are dropping within the wealthier Caucasian community, but the birth rates are flying through the roof in the, let's say, the African or the Hispanic communities where you have greater birth and less economic development. And so maybe you want to be able to genetically control that. Maybe you also want to maybe let's say you're anti-religious and you find that you want to wipe out the religious, those that are very religious in society. You may want to develop a genetically modifying medication that would inhibit or get rid of people who are prone to one kind of behavior versus another. So you can control the genetical makeup of the persons in society. Now, these are all speculations that are grounded in quite a bit of scientific research and facts that we have to be aware of. Now, the bottom line to all of this is that it's very clear that over the years, there's a steady march towards a global governance model. There's a steady march towards a one world government. There's a steady march towards getting rid of individual liberty, individual sovereignty, individual freedom, and ceding that to a small number of persons who form an oligarchy. Here in Jamaica, we just saw in full view our Prime Minister over the last 2.5 years demonstrating that the current constitution of Jamaica allows him to do things to the Jamaican people that were unimaginable a few years ago. We never realized how far it has gone. But we have been very careless as a people. We have been very compliant and complicit as a people. And we have allowed over time for the government to more and more take over our rights as citizens. And the way they get to do this is by offering us freeness. It's not free enough, but they call it free, and they get us to give up our responsibility to think, to reason, to challenge, to be aware, to say, oh, we're getting free education, which free education is free brainwashing. It's the government having the authority to brainwash you with your own money, because it's not free. They're taking the money from you and then telling you what they will allow you to have at school, and then you must fit into that, and then they control your knowledge. Free healthcare, again, they take our money away from us, and then they design a system and then say, that is what you must fit into. So we move away, for example, from learning how to care for ourselves, learning how to use natural remedies and tools, having an industry develop around natural medicine, and instead they have stamped out all of those things. They've stamped it all out so that we're now depending on one set of pharmaceutical directions in terms of our healthcare. So our education is tampered with, our healthcare is tampered with, and having subjugated us for so long, they're now going the next step. They've taken away our individual sovereignty, and now the next step is to take away our national sovereignty. Must become subservient to some unelected government, even if we still have elected politicians. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a very dangerous and careless thing, Mr. President. It's either our politicians are incompetent or they are corrupt. And I'm not sure which one, because of the levels to which this goes and how often this kind of thing happens, where our interest is not served. I can go further with the unelected entity part. The United Nations, and of which the World Health Organization is a part, is an ordinary international organization that nations voluntarily join. But how does the United Nations get funded? It is funded through charitable donations. All the activities of the United Nations. And there are several companies in recent times that have been proven to be big donors to the United Nations. The United Nations and all its sister agencies are now beneficiaries of funding from Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance. It's now being funded by the World Economic Forum and Pfizer and several of the other large pharmaceutical companies. The World Economic Forum in particular is an business association with 1,000 of the world's richest companies as members and 1,000 of the world's richest people as associates. These rich people, these oligarchs that you speak about, are now the ones pulling the strings of persons in these positions, such as the Director General of the WHO. Why he's telling us these falsehoods that it is not a power grab. There's a series of meetings that has taken place since the United States you opted to use this loophole in the amendment regulations of the World Health Organization in preparation for this World Health Assembly that is coming. All right. And to say that the resolution won't be considered at this World Health Assembly is also a falsehood. It has been tabled on the agenda. I've seen that agenda myself published by the United Nations for the matter to be discussed. Now, yes, they can change their minds, but the framework has already been ratified, and it's for the international nation negotiating body to finalize these clauses. And then there's also an amendment that was put in the proposal by the US to fast track the coming into force of these regulations. Usually it is a 24-month period. It has been fast tracked to 6 months. That particular amendment also removes the ability to object to the amendment only. So when this amendment is ratified fully by all members, you cannot object to the amendment only. When you raise an objection, you're objecting to the entire framework, which makes it now difficult to object.
So basically, here's the bottom line. To me, the bottom line is this. It is very clear from the last 2.5 years in particular that the WHO is an organization that cannot be trusted and should not be trusted. Very clear. It is also very clear that the government of Jamaica is an organization that cannot be trusted and should not be trusted. It is also very clear that the United States, as a leader of the free world, so to speak, cannot be trusted and should not be trusted. Who then can we trust? In my humble opinion, the only person we can trust is ourselves. We can only trust each individual being able to make a decision for themselves. And so when it comes on to our health, it should be my body, my choice. When it comes on to our finances, it should be my money, my choice. When it comes on to our education, it should be my mind, my choice. But what we're seeing from the WHO, sponsored by the US and fully endorsed by the Jamaican government, is my body and the WHO's choice. So basically, who is in charge of my body? It is the WHO. Who is in charge of your body? It's the WHO. And what they're about to do now is to put in place a central bank digital currency, CBDC, that will allow them to be able to cut off your ability to access the economy, to buy and sell, to trade, cut off your ability to trade if you do not comply. This is the danger. They also wanted to have the NIDS card with all your biometrics so that they could track you down and eliminate you from any program, any government activity any travel arrangements by having this biometric card, later on an implant maybe, to be able to track and isolate you and punish you. They're going in the direction of China with the social credit system, where the government of China, the communist government of China, the dictatorship of China, the totalitarian system of China, where a citizen, if they're not doing what the government says, then the government would have the electronic capacity to turn off your access to life in general. You know, your ability to go to the grocery store, to go to the pharmacy, to go to school, to go to church, to travel within and outside the country. So the whole idea behind all of this is to lock you down so you become 100% compliant. And only those who comply will be given the freedom to enjoy themselves. But what kind of freedom is that? Because what they're going to do, they're going to take away your bodily autonomy, which means what are they putting into you? And you have no choice over it. So when your government says the WHO has approved this new injection and you ought to take this injection, you have only one choice, which means no choice at all. You either take the injection or you suffer exclusion from the economy. And that is a very painful exclusion because you can't get a job. You can't earn.
Now, person might be listening, Mr. President, and
Yes.
thinking, how would this exclusion work?
Yes.
The bad language of the proposed amendment. For example, it says the Director General of the WHO will design a compliance mechanism. We didn't specify the compliance mechanism before we became signatory. It's like signing a contract blindly without knowing the key performance indicators beforehand.
Yes.
So anything can now be added and say, okay, you had signed this contract, but now here is what is required of you. So we have entered into an agreement that is binding despite what is said, because they will use whatever means necessary to get compliance, especially at the national level. Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna have another Sri Lanka, right? Because all they're going to do, and this is why the UIC has always said we need to extract ourselves from their monetary system. We need to have an independent monetary system, a Jamaican monetary system that gives us control over our finances. We need to stop following the debt-based model of running a country and make Jamaica independent of borrowing to survive. We need to change our education model. We need to change our healthcare model. The UIC has been saying this now for 10 years. We have been trying to educate the Jamaican people. Of course, that's why we're blocked from regular media, because they don't want the Jamaican people hearing this. They know that all they have to do is to create a fake crisis, and the people quickly give up their rights, and before they know it, they'll lose those rights forever. Our best course of action now is to leave the WHO. But we know that the two colonial parties have no interest in doing that. You see, right now, the government is fighting for a Commonwealth position. That's their interest. That's what they're spending taxpayers' money for, to go fight for a Commonwealth position. You see the Prime Minister being very proud to take on the QC position, the Queen's Council. So he's committed to keeping us in colonialism. You see the whole direction of our country and our government is to make Jamaica continue to be a dependent country. Now, when you are a dependent country, you do whatever your benefactor says. And that is why Jamaica does not have any policies of its own. Jamaica currently doesn't have any sovereignty. I see people are worried about us losing our sovereignty. We have lost our sovereignty a long time ago. Jamaica has no sovereignty. The Prime Minister that we have and the opposition leader that we have and the two parties that control our government, they do as they are told. So if the powers that be says lock down your country, that's what they do. If they say bribe everybody to take an injection, that's what they do. They're not here to do the will of the Jamaican people. The government of Jamaica is not the government of the people of Jamaica. It is the government of the private sector organization of Jamaica in terms of the oligarchs who run it, and it is also the government of the colonial masters. Why is this so? Our very model of politics is based on money. Who has the most money? The Jamaican people do not fund political parties directly. It's the oligarchs, the PSOJ oligarchs, who fund the Jamaican political parties, the two colonial parties, which means the party is going to do what is in the best interest of the PSOJ oligarchs. Similarly, the Jamaican government is dependent on the International Monetary Fund, on the World Bank, and on the blessings of the global powers for its financial position. Our government has consistently been based on a debt-based model of funding our existence, which keeps the nation consistently in debt. Even when we pay it down, we're going to run it right back up because we're following a debt-based model. If we want to have a truly free Jamaica, we're going to have to sever those ties. Now, it doesn't mean we're not going to engage with the international community. It means we're going to engage with them in a different way. Take, for example, Cuba. Cuba has been outside of the IMF now for some 60 years. The only thing that has been stopping Cuba from achieving more is because of the US embargo against them. Cuba, however, is a communist country, so they also sabotage themselves internally by not allowing proper property rights and the freedom that would bring out the best in their citizens. But they have survived 60 years of American embargo, and they have survived not being a part of the International Monetary Fund. So it means that a country can. Now, just imagine if we have a free Jamaica, a truly free Jamaica, a true republic, but we take ourselves out of the international monetary system and have our own system and engage other countries in bilateral agreements that allows us to operate as a free nation, and then take charge of our healthcare so we can teach our citizens how to live healthy, how to eat healthy. We can develop our agri-sector into organic agriculture so that we can have less cases of cancer and be able to export quality foods at premium prices to the rest of the world. We can develop our own water harvesting facility and become a net exporter of water. We can expand our own local energy capacity and get into geothermal energy, biogas energy, solar energy, and reduce our dependence on foreign oil and be able to have a mix of at least 30, then 40, then 60, then 80% of our energy needs being supplied from our own indigenous sources. We can also make Jamaica a truly outstanding tourist destination by making the entire country an all-inclusive destination from east to west and north to south. We would then have massive foreign exchange earnings coming into our country, building a massive reserve. And by the way, by reserve, I don't mean government reserve, but private company reserves based on our tourism product. This would allow Jamaica to be economically independent because of our organic exports, because of our tourism sector, because of our water export, and because we're the freest country on earth. We'll also get many people running away from unsafe countries, totalitarian countries like the United States and others that have become more and more dictatorial. They'll run away. Scientists will run away and come here. Doctors and nurses and teachers and brilliant minds will want to come and live in Jamaica, and that would expand our human capital and make us the richest small country on the face of the earth. What do you say to that, Mr. Wright?
Indeed, indeed. Now, this level of self-sufficiency is very achievable, but we need the presence of mind of clear leadership that will not be duped. A leader that has had international business experience, a leader that has had experience negotiating contracts and not just being a pumped up civil servant that is self-promoting and who believes in his own grandiose self more than the ability he actually possesses. We need a leader that will think about the interest of the people and understand the people that he serves. The expression I like is that a rich king in a poor country is no king at all. And he's obviously rich and out of touch. Where I see his people are now proposing to 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 beg to support our elderly and vulnerable. That is the sum total of their ideas.
That one rubbed me really hard. I mean, we're gonna beg. Why are we building a culture of begging in this country? I just did my Labor Day project. I want to tell you about it now that you've brought this up. So my Labor Day project, which we did between yesterday and today, was quite simple. There's a gentleman that was homeless, and I said was because he's no longer homeless as of today. Was homeless, and we built a small one-room house for him on some family land. There's a whole heap of them that live on the piece of land, but he didn't have anything. And we built a little house for him on that. He was sleeping outside and sleeping in some unsavory places and so on. But here's the model that I use for this project, which the community has now said they embrace that model and want us to replicate the model. So the model I've done is, instead of giving him the money for free, we have paid for the construction of his house up front, and now he's going to work to pay back that money, while his neighbors and friends and even enemies maybe, we all came together and provided him the labor to build this house, provided he agrees to do the same for somebody else's house. So he's going to also provide his labor to help build somebody else's house. So he's going to pay back in labor, he's going to pay back by working. And that was my Labor Day project today. I do not believe in this handout mentality that we have created around our country. The mindset is debilitating, it's very destructive, and it has hurt our people. So to see one of the government talking heads talking about setting up a GoFundMe page to help the elderly in this country is despicable. What we need to do is to recognize that we have failed the Jamaican people, and now the government needs to follow the UIC's policy and convert the GCT into a poverty eradication tax. So we use that tax 100% to eliminate the problem created by bad governance over the last 78 years. So let's make sure we use that money to deal with the elderly that have now suffered the consequences of bad governance, deal with our children to make sure they get proper education, proper nutrition, and proper housing, help those who are at the bottom of the ladder to get into a works program. And we have lots of work here in Jamaica. We have a massive amount of forestry that we need to turn into a food forest using permaculture principle. We can create 100,000 jobs in permaculture throughout our forestry, so we can convert that massive amount of forestry into food production in a sustainable way that doesn't require the expensive organic inputs of traditional, I shouldn't say traditional farming, of the artificial approach to farming, which has now become the traditional approach. We need to go back to permaculture, go back to organic, and help our people transition into that and build a new economy around quality agriculture, as opposed to the destructive one that our politicians brought in. They're the ones that brought in the so-called free seeds that have now made us dependent on GMOs. They're the ones who brought in the free fertilizers that have destroyed our lands and made our farmers now poorer because they couldn't keep up with the high cost of inputs. They're the ones who failed to educate our children to learn and understand how to do mass, high quality, highly profitable farming the way it's done in the Netherlands. That small country in the Netherlands is generating over $95 billion in exports. We in Jamaica could have long been doing the same, but these two parties have failed us tremendously. All they're there for is to collect money. Any source that gives them money gets to control them. They're not about developing this country, and I'm asking the Jamaican people to help the UIC, we're never going to get the funding from the PSOJ. So let's forget about that. We don't even want it. We don't want any money from big business that wants to change this agenda. If you're giving us any money, it must be that you're signing the dotted line that you support this agenda. So most of them won't do that. I want you, the small men and women of Jamaica, to donate, to volunteer, to join, and to help us to win this election so that we can transition Jamaica from failure, from poverty, to real prosperity. Not the fake prosperity where a few succeed and the majority fail, but real prosperity. That's what we want. What do you say to that, Mr. Wright?
Now, that's something we need, real prosperity. And that has been lacking over the past 78 years. But you're talking about a grassroots movement supported by the people to come up and do the work of the people. And I have had this conversation with supporters, detractors, and our people on the inside. And the conversation is simply this: your support will take the UIC where it needs to be. And the question is, but how can my $1,000 membership help? I'm going to give one example tonight. When a senator from Illinois wanted to become president, he launched a campaign where he asked every single American to give him $1. $1. Now, everyone didn't, but the majority that liked him and liked what he stood for gave him $1. And to this day, he's the highest earning fundraiser in America. And his model is being followed by several other candidates to this day. $1. That's all he asked for.
Yes.
Now, considering the horrible value of the Jamaican dollar, we can ask for $1. We had to amplify it some. And that $1,000 represents 2 drinks at the bar with your friends, or a trip to somewhere unsavory that you shouldn't have been, where your wife will be upset with you, somewhere where you wanted to unwind. It could be any number of things. But the UIC can use $1,000 from every single Jamaican. But guess what? We are realistic. We are pragmatic, right, Mr. Romans? So since we are pragmatic, the 63% of Jamaicans who are now disengaged from the electoral process because they don't see an opportunity, they don't see the real representation, and they see what the UIC is saying, that the past 78 years has been a sellout, one administration after the other. That 63% give to the UIC, please, $1,000. $1,000. And we will transform the lives of Jamaicans for the better. And the president, being an open-minded, well-articulate thinker, has dialed into this, and he'll tell you more about 1 in 25.
Yeah, we have on one of my last lives, one of the recent lives I did, the suggestion was made and I jumped on it. We want 1,000 persons to give $25 a month across the diaspora, across the nation. 1,000 giving $25 a month. And then, of course, everybody else can give $10 a month, 1,000 Jamaican dollars a month, whatever it is. But if we all give, then I know more you want to see me going across the country. Remember, I'm not a full-time politician, but the time has come for me to step up and do that. But I can't do it without you. The only way for me to be able to go all 14 parishes, all 228 divisions, all 6,000 polling divisions, for me to get around and move around, and for a team of us to get around and move around for security, for refreshment, for traveling costs, for income replacement, all of these things, we need to donate to get that done. I am ready to do the work for you. I've been working on your behalf for the last 10 years. We have people like Mr. Winston Wright, our chairman. We have Naika Williams, our treasurer. We have my wife, Mrs. Patterson. We have the general secretary, Chase Neal. We have the VP Acosta. We have VP Gordon. We have VP Burke. We have our recruitment director, Marlon Douglas. We have our jump director, Sheldon Wallace. We have all these brilliant people who want to get the work done for you, but you have to help us. Don't just sit on the sideline. Don't just don't be an audience. Don't just be an audience. Don't just watch the entertainment of politics, because we're not into the entertainment. Let us focus on getting the work done. And the way for us to do that is for you to donate, for you to volunteer, for you to join. Get your friends and family to go on the website, uicjamaica.com, and join. Subscribe to our lives, subscribe to UIC Liberty TV, subscribe to our Facebook page, subscribe to Twitter, Instagram, so that you can be a part of the journey. We are going to take back this country. We can. I know many people thought it was impossible. They think that there's no way a third party can survive in Jamaica, but we have survived. We are surviving. We are growing. We're going through growing pains as well, which is expected. Don't let anybody fool you. It is normal for us to be under attack. There's going to be attacks from every single direction, from within and without the organization. But we shall and must overcome. Together, we're stronger. We're stronger together if we bond our hands together, if we muscle down and determine that we're going to create this new Jamaica. We can do it. Having people sitting on Facebook and social media talking, and you have many persons who are just sharing their views generally. You know, you have some entertainers, you have some influencers. Here's the big deal. Here's the problem. You need to understand, after they finish talking, that's the end of it. It will not change a thing. It is good for us to talk, but it's more important for us to act. We cannot change Jamaica if we don't change the government. We cannot change Jamaica if we don't change the system of governance. We cannot change Jamaica if we don't change the leadership of Jamaica. And so far, we have suffered under the leadership and the system of governance of two parties that were sanctioned and protected and made permanent by the colonial masters. They got rid of Marcus Garvey. They got rid of Marcus Garvey's People Political Party. The UIC is here as the reincarnation of Marcus Garvey and his People's Political Party. We're here to reinstitute the values that he wanted for us as a people. The value of self-reliance, the value of industry, the value of taking responsibility for yourself, for your community and your country, the value of understanding that we as a people, Black people, have the capacity to rule ourselves, to govern ourselves, and to achieve great things. Wherever we were not restricted by government, we have done it. We have done it in sports because government couldn't stop us from busting out. And so we have a Usain Bolt, and we have a Shelley and Fraser and Elaine Thompson and Merlin Ottey and all of those great sprinters, because they were able to bust out in spite of government oppression, the poverty and the unsafety of government. We have had great people bust out like Bob Marley and Shabba Ranks and Chronics and Blackahood, all kinds of Jamaicans who have bust out on the entertainment stage in spite of the oppression of our government. Now it's time for us to bust out economically, but we can't bust out if we still have this oppressor oppressing us, because they control the economy. They control the economy. The PSOJ's oligarchs, the few who control this economy, also control our politicians, control our politics, and they are preventing Jamaica's economy from busting out. We now have to bust it out ourselves by replacing them, by saying we will not allow the PSOJ money to fool us again. We know they control TVJ. We know they control CVM. We know they control all the radio stations. But we're saying we will now reach the people ourselves, because we are the people. So we're going to reach ourselves. We're going to, every one of us here, We are going to go and find our friends and our family and say, this is the UIC and this way I support, and this way I run with now. And so even though they block us from TV, block us from radio, block us from newspaper, they can't block word to mouth. They can't block word of mouth. For you to tell your family and friends, them can't stop that. So you take up your WhatsApp and you say, here, watch UIC Liberty TV. Listen to what Mr. Patterson said. Hear what the UIC stand for and join the movement. And don't bother talk about, me not see them, get involved. Make them see you. Buy a UIC shirt and wear that in your community and go and talk to people and sign up people and say, come register as a member of the UIC. You are the future of Jamaica. You are the best advertisement for the UIC. If all of us play our part, we'll cover all 14 parishes overnight. We'll cover all 228 divisions overnight. We'll cover every single PD overnight. But we have to have faith and confidence in ourselves. This is not a one-man show. This is a one Jamaica show. So we can come together and we can and must get it done. Don't let nobody fool you. Don't listen to the noise out there. There are noise that are going to try to dissuade you. They're going to try to discourage you. They're going to try to tell you that you can't trust Mr. Patterson, you can't trust the UIC, and so on, because they want to discredit us and they want to stop you from thinking outside the box. But tell them it now worked this time. They have killed many third parties in the past, but they're not going to kill this one, because this party is your party. It is the people's party. It is the education party. It is the empowerment party. It is the party that is committed to liberating Jamaica and liberating you as an individual Jamaican. Your turn, Mr. Wright.
I can't say it better than you have. But you left out one important Jamaican that bust out.
Yes.
Because the government was that involved, and that is the body snatcher, Mike McCallum, my favorite.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'll share a story with you, my president.
Yes.
I was at an event in the constituency, represented in my UIC colors as usual, with my pamphlet in my pocket and meeting the people. And I ended up having a very lengthy discussion with a young man that has a business idea that is similar to mine. The difference is I relinquished my intellectual claim and gave over the idea to the community to create income for members of the community, and has been working with the community to develop the idea in that stead. I spoke to him and I see synergy between his idea and mine. And he laments not having access to capital. And he's wondering what to do next because his idea is a good one. And I smiled and mentioned the Community Capital Club, but I told him if he wants to hear more, he has my number, he has my email address, he needs to be in touch. And I gave him a snippet of what the Community Capital Club represents. And he started smiling from the first word capital until the end of the brief synopsis.
Absolutely.
Because in his eyes, I saw the realization that there is hope. The UIC is that to the people of Jamaica, hope. But that hope will only actualize, will only come about if we stop being fooled. Because those who say don't trust Joseph Patterson can offer one shred of evidence why not to trust Joseph Patterson. They can only speak loosely so as not to incur the liability of libeling your name. Okay? Those who want to rip this organization from your arms can only say, oh, Joe is no good. They can offer no evidence as to why not. What they have failed to see is that you are creating something from scratch, birthing something in a group of people who has never had this. And there is nothing more difficult than unlearning a learned behavior in adults, and any professional in an adult learning or training role will tell you that it is the most daunting, more difficult task to have in an organization. And you're the only one carrying this burden. And yet they will seek to discourage instead of building. No one is willing to put cause above self. And in the past, it was the same problem the great movements of liberations had, from Nation of Islam to the UNIA to the movement of Martin Luther King, where people fail to put cause above self. And all this is coming full circle. And I asking my people in the age of Aquarius to be wise. Well, how do you put it, Mr. President? To be wise as a serpent and understand that this is an attempt to stifle us from becoming an example to others, show them how to break free of the oppressive system of government. Jamaica is poised for greatness, people. We can save the next generation and the generation after that, because we now know that this government, this present administration is a sellout, and we need to work from there to bring back Jamaica to its glory. Bring back Jamaica to where we were back in the days gone. So my people, be wise as that serpent. We know who that sellout is now. Let's drive him out of office, and those who sat tacitly and support what he is doing, let's drive them out of office and put people in, put the UIC in, because they represent the people and the true hopes of the people. Over to you, Mr. President.
Sure. So we're going to wrap up this discussion now. I promised my wife that I would not stay on for 1.5 hours. But before we go, let's take some questions now. Do we have any questions out there that we can respond to? Any questions from anyone? Do you think you'll win with no contribution from the PSOJ at all?
But you already answered that, right?
Yes. Go ahead, Mr.
I guess this question was before we spoke.
Yeah, maybe.
We gave the example of a prominent U.S. politician who was a senator, asked for a contribution of $1 from each American citizen to contribute to his campaign, and he raised the most money even to this day and became president. And we're asking Jamaicans, be selfless, put cause above self, put country, put the next generation above this one, and contribute, especially that 63% that is disengaged. So yes, we can win with your support. And if you don't have the treasure, we will take your time, because it is just as valuable.
Yes, man. This is key, Listen, let us believe in ourselves, people. Let us believe in us. The only reason for the UIC to fail is if you fail to contribute. If you can't, I'm doing my part. Chairman Winston is doing his part. Naika, the treasurer, is doing her part. If all of us were to just do a part of it, if only thing we can do is give $1,000 a month, if all we can do is volunteer and become a cheerleader, become a recruiter, to go into your own community, at your own workplace, in your own circles, and just recruit persons to the UIC, you'd have done a great deed, right? Let's see if
before you move on, Mr. President, I would like to ask the person that asked that question. Have you volunteered with the UIC? Have you donated, especially in the past month? Have you created a group of at least 12 people and had a meeting with them, send an email to the UIC to say, I want you to join this meeting? If you have done any of that, or you can do any of that, let us know. I'll be happy to attend virtually, as far as I am from you, or I may be from you. That's all we need to do, bring people together.
Absolutely. Question from Philip Lopez. How will you deal with an embargo on Jamaica, assuming the US and other countries don't want to stand with us in terms of us not being in line or a part of it as it relates to the WHO? The way to deal with an embargo, first of all, my job as the leader of Jamaica, should you elect the UIC, will be to be quite diplomatic in dealing with and working with our peers around the world, right? So we're going to try to make sure we negotiate carefully. If having done that, there's an embargo placed on Jamaica, I'm going to make sure that we're food secure, we're water secure, and we're energy secure, and that we develop our internal economy so that we're very strong economically internally. I'm also going to make sure that we develop good relations with our Caribbean neighbors, so that we can work well together. But the fact is, once there's an embargo, it's going to be a challenge, and it's now a matter of, are we effective in leading our people to respond to this? We can learn a lot from countries that have suffered from embargoes. We can see how they have managed, and we can learn and adopt some of what they have done. But I particularly like the diplomacy that was exhibited by Lee Kuan Yew, in the way he was able to channel Singapore in a particular direction, even though it was contrary in many instances to the direction of, say, the US and England. And he was able to be diplomatic about it in such a way that even though they might disagree with some of his directions, they did not stop trading with Singapore because of the way he was able to build bridges diplomatically. So we'll try to do that. Next question. What did the funds that were already raised from the inception of the party up until now used for? They have been used for all of the expenses. You probably didn't see our presentation last night, where we went through and show all the expenses and all the income. So, for example, we did a 14 parish tour, so we spent money on that. We did a number of Walk for Liberty leading up to the September 22nd walk, so we spent money on that. Our software infrastructure that we have with the database and all of that takes money. Our website maintenance takes money. Our web hosting takes money. Our administrative expenses, for example, we had one staff that we had to pay him. We now have, we're about to have 2 staff, and monies will go into that. So we have spent the money on the things that are important to run the organization. So all the operating expenditures, all the activities that we have done, and we have done quite a lot of activities. We have held training sessions for our candidates. We had training sessions in Cornwall, Middlesex, and Surrey. We had multiple training sessions in some cases. We also did canvassing in some communities where we took a large number of our members and went to different communities and have canvassing. We have had members meeting, the annual members congress. We had 2 in a very short period, thanks to some disruptions that cost us money to have 2, and so on. So we have spent the monies on the things that you would normally expect to be spent on for a political movement. Next question.
Before you move on, Mr. President, let me thank Joyce Smith for that question, and also for additional clarity to those who are listening, especially those who would want to detract from what you have said. One organization, for example, in the private sector donated $31.5 million during the last election to both parties. So each party got $31.5 million, which is the maximum allowed under law to donate to the party. That doesn't include what they donated to candidates. Another organization donated $15 million, divided equally between both parties. Now, you see where those figures are going. Now, those 2 colonial parties have a massive war chest. So far, we have just done $37 million for one party. UIC only raised $1 billion and something over the life of the movement. Am I correct?
So raised the what? How much?
Just about $1 billion over the life of the movement.
You said did you say $1 billion?
No, million.
Oh, no. So over the life of the movement, given the recent numbers that we have now, I would estimate the last time I put something out, it was $6 million over the life of the movement, roughly. Now we're up to about maybe 9 million or so over the life of the movement. The life of the movement, eh?
Which is a 5-year period?
Let's take it from the time that we became incorporated. So we're incorporated in 2015 is when we're fully incorporated as a movement, right? So from, if you take 2022, 2015, you're looking at how many years?
2022 to 2015.
You're looking at
about 7 years.
7 years.
Yes.
So over that 7 year period from December 2015, and we did have some things before that, but let's call it that, 7 years. Over 7 years, roughly about, let's say, 9 million over 7 years.
All right. And
Which is
now
nothing. That's peanuts.
that is while I understand why people are asking, I'm pointing out the comparison of what it takes to run a party. These
Yes.
parties have well-oiled machinery because they have built up this war chest of steady donors from the private sector organization.
Yeah.
They own these parties, have these parties to do their bidding. So they have cash on hand.
Yes.
So what we have raised, thanks to hardworking men and women who have supported us, that we are grateful for, is only a drop in the bucket compared to what these guys have. And that is why we have been careful about how we move and how we operate and how we expend.
Yeah, and we don't have a steady base of donors, meaning persons who always consistently give the same amount. So every month you're not sure what your intake is going to be. So we have never been in a position where we can plan long term and know that we're going to spend on this and spend on that. It's just what do we get this month and what can we do, right? So let's be very practical here. The UIC now have the money. We have not had any money from. We've been surviving on a shoestring. You're talking about, based on the average that I'm seeing, roughly about $1 million right now in today's terms, about $1 million for the year, $1.2 million for the year, which is absolutely nothing. That's nothing. But it's more than where we started out. I mean, we started with zero. So the first few years, I remembered it was sometime in 2018, I believe, when I stopped paying for the internet service, stopped paying for the hosting. I used to pay for it out of my pocket every single month. And I remember it was in 2018 that we finally broke the corner and I was no longer paying that particular bill. The UIC don't have any money, folks. People are beginning to donate now, more and more. Like, for example, I think yesterday, for example, 5 persons sent in anywhere from $50 to $250 US, right? And the day before that, maybe 10 persons sent in between $10 and $75. And the day before that, maybe 3 persons sent in $25 and 6 persons. So it's very, very small, but we're growing. It's much better than before. We're getting better and better and better. And so we're going to be in a more powerful position. The more people wake up and become aware that, listen, hey, we can do this. We can do this. We can take charge of our own political party and our own country. We can own this UIC. This can become our party, as opposed to the other two, which are owned by the colonial masters and the PSOG oligarchs. Any other questions?
I need you to do one thing for me, Mr. President, and I'm going to beg your indulgence and your forgiveness.
Yes.
The distraction that we have suffered over the past few months, how has that affected the UIC finances?
It caused a significant dip, right? I mean, you have persons who have canceled their donations because of the lies and innuendos that have been circulated around. And, I just wish and hope that people be a little bit more sensible. Like, don't be so easily. I saw one of our candidates. This one really hurt me, Winston. One of our candidates, I heard that she resigned. She never came to me, never came to you, never came to the NEC, never came to the leadership and say that she's concerned about this and she's considering resigning. She never even sent the resignation in to the body, but she went publicly and resigned. I'm like, how can somebody be so, what's the word? How can you do that? What if you think there's a problem, you come and you ask. You say, well, Mr. President, I'm hearing this, what is that? What do you have to say about it? But instead you ask no question, but you make a decision. But I also heard, though, today, I heard that people are being paid $60,000 to leave the UIC. The young fellow Horace Johnson recently, who we gave a loan for 20. Well, I gave a personal loan for 25,000 because he asked for it, and I gave him exactly what he asked for. He asked for 25,000. He asked for a short period to pay it back, and he dictated how much he can pay back, and we gave him exactly what he asked for. Then I saw him in the public saying how bad we are, about how bad I am for doing that. And then I hear that they gave him $25,000 so that he could go and do that. So this is the kind of dirty politics which they're playing. But I expected this. I expected this.
Hold on. Let's not go to the dirty politics as yet, because let's assume that that the persons who did that are ignorant fools.
Yeah.
But these are the same persons that say they love the UIC and they want to wrestle it from your arms, correct?
Yes.
What is one of the principles of the UIC?
Yeah.
No handouts.
Absolutely.
You create work fear to encourage self-sufficiency.
Absolutely.
And they have broken that cardinal rule while accusing you of hypocrisy.
Yes.
That's a very interesting comparison.
It is. They're actually buying people, and people are falling for it. I mean, you have a previous vice president who is offering people free stays at her guest house or whatever it is, and all these things. They're doing the very things that they're accusing me of. They're doing the, and so anybody who falls for that, how can you trust a person who's buying you if they can't get you to join them based on intellect? They have to give you money so that you will join them. Something is wrong with that.
They have to induce you to their corner. Interesting.
Exactly.
Your promise, Mrs. Patterson, you won't be on.
Yes, I'm going to drop off now. Last question.
Yes.
What will happen to the people with the increase of interest rate by the Bank of Jamaica? You won't be able to pay your mortgages. You will have a harder time accessing credit because it's going to be too expensive, especially for small businesses. So more small businesses are going to close, more jobs are going to be lost, and more people are going to begin to lose their homes because they can't afford the higher interest rate on their renewed mortgages. So all in all, they're about to wipe out more small businesses. The last 2.5 years was about destroying small businesses, destroying micro enterprises, making people dependent, trying to push universal basic income, trying to get us all to become welfare recipients as opposed to productive, industrious, independent individuals. Their goal, the goal of the globalists, the goal of the global totalitarian state agenda is to make us all dependent on government and controlled by the global oligarchs. So it's very important for you to join the UIC, volunteer, donate, so we can create one Jamaica, united, strong, and free. Thank you all very much. Have a good night. Until next time, keep the peace. Take care.